sort of the keystone of the record. When we wrote as one, it was it felt like the it kind of led the way a little bit. It felt like it was the song that could dictate the path of the rest of the record. I think as soon as we kind of wrote it, we were sort of searching around for something, and you don't quite know what you're searching around for, and then suddenly you stumble upon it, and it suggests how the rest of the record could go, and it suggested a narrative for the record, and it sort of suggested not so much a sort of sonic thing, I suppose, because there's very few songs like it on the album. It's not like I think it's quite unique on the record, but it suggested a sort of direction, I think.
I think after the last record there was a real sense that there was something really strong about looking at an album as a whole, almost like a long song and having an intro and an outro and kind of building it that way, without it being kind of as deliberately a sit and listen in one go as the last one. I think we just learned from that there's something really strong about building an album that kind of fits together that way. So it's kind of quite early on with most of these songs, it was kind of like, where's it going to go, rather than...
Yeah, I mean that's sort of what we're trying to do now, really, in a sort of broader sense, is kind of craft albums, That's sort of that's what I see Suede's role as, really. I think we're not kind of interested in sort of, it's kind of evolved into something sort of a little bit broader than just sort of writing a few songs and chucking them together on a record, which is brilliant in a way, that kind of like vitality that kind of debut albums have, sort of thing. But why not use experience and age and these sorts of things, and why necessarily view those things as bad things in pop music? Pop music is seen as such a young person's thing, but why not kind of use those things as strengths, and kind of experience to be able to do those kind of things, the kind of like the painstaking work which Neil does mainly. Those kind of things that sort of patience only really comes with age, I think. So we're able to do that. So yeah.
We kind of just fenced off bits around it. We had the song, and then we kind of had a minute in front of it and said, we'll do something here, we'll come back to that. And we just gradually filled it in and couldn't kind of stop ourselves putting more ridiculous ideas into it. But I think you kind of we waited, because that was one of the first things we wrote for the record, and then we kind of waited until we'd written the rest of the record and kind of see what other songs suggested that we could kind of steal ideas from other bits of songs, and then kind of have them kind of suggest places that as one could go, I think. But that's the thing, I think, when you're kind of trying to make a record rather than just a collection of songs, you kind of look to have these kind of themes or kind of ideas that can string you along through the record, so it kind of rewards a long listen rather than just something that could end up on a playlist somewhere. So I think that kind of came into it when we were writing. But yeah, it's kind of one of those, the process of, you have to kind of take a long view of it, really. I think often with the pop songs, the best songs take 10 minutes to write, but we really wanted to kind of do something different with this record, and kind of the more craft you can put into it, the better, I think.
The demo that the three of you did was pretty big, though. I mean, even before the choirs and all that business. I mean, I remember when I first heard it, thinking it sounded pretty epic when it was just the three of you. It's got that kind of cinematic thing, hasn't it?
Its sense of dynamic was established the day it was written. Yeah, it was starting very low, and then it was actually the genesis of it was the piano riff that Neil came up with when we actually wrote the song at your house, didn't we? And everything else was kind of written to go with that, to complement it, to keep that icy mood, and it sort of built up from there.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of tracks on the album, As One and Tides, which kind of start very small, and rather than do the normal Suede thing of like verse, chorus, middle eight, outro, kind of just start small and end big, and it's a different kind of shape of song for us.
And it went through a couple of different stages as well during the writing. There were some
we
other bits
had
of
loads
music.
of things at the end as well.
Yeah, we sort of
Didn't quite
wrote
work.
other bits and tacked them onto the end, and sort of we tried to take it on a bit of a journey, but then we found that it was
Oh
it
yeah, I
was just
forgot about
better.
that. Yeah.
It was better just kind of reaching this
It was
amazing
going to be
crescendo.
really, really long, wasn't it?
At one
Kind of-
stage, yeah.
Yeah, it was going to be like an Asphalt Wildy sort of thing, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Kind
with
of,
lots of
Yeah,
different moods.
We were
Lots
looking
to
at
do
tracks
that,
that could kind of be quite long, and that was the one that we thought could take it. But I think stretching everybody's patience for a 15-minute long song to
Right
start
at the
the
start,
record.
yeah.
And also, it felt better for it to end with
literally
that.
skirt. Yeah.
It felt better to end, you know, with a kind of slap in the face, really.
Brett had written this kind of backing vocal thing, and at the end, and I thought, well, it sounded a bit. I don't really like those things where you get people with strong voices, and all you hear is kind of like a choir of them on a song. It kind of annoys me slightly. So I kind of wanted other voices doing it. So I thought, well, let's try this backing vocal as a choir. So I kind of got organised that, and
Just looking for another texture, weren't we, for the record
Yeah.
that we hadn't used before. I think that was when we sat down and talked about writing the record. We had a kind of list of sort of things that we wanted to try and do. One of the things was like write a really, really long song. One of the other things was, I can't remember what the other things were, but one of the things was spoken word, and one thing was using choir, and trying to look for elements that we hadn't used before in Suede records to try and take it somewhere else, and sort of edge it in without it sounding sort of too much like we kind of hired thousands of singers sort of thing, But
oh well.
yeah.
And we've recorded it on this really wintry day in Hackney. That's all I can remember about it. But yeah, they weren't really kind of like classically trained choir. I didn't want that kind of thing where they all sound like a kind of big chorus who are used to kind of singing bits of Mahler together. It had to sound quite folk horror-esque, I think. It had to sound like not too like a musical, do you know what I mean?
You want that kind of ordinary people vibe, don't
Exactly,
you? That kind of, almost like kind
not
of like
kind of sung like operatic, in an operatic way, just like something a bit more down to earth.
I'm really proud of the track as a song. I think it's kind of quite. When I think about it, I can't really sort of think that it doesn't really seem to reference anything in my head, anything else. And there's plenty of our songs that do reference other people's songs or even our own songs or something like that. But that's one I can't really think of a kind of reference. But it seemed to just sort of sprang out, didn't it? One day, it's one of those sort of songs.
Yeah,
that
it came
it's
quite
just-
quickly, I think.
It's this odd little thing that came out, and we sort of tried to kind of write more songs like it, didn't we? But it kind of like it was one of those ones that just was on its own, really.
Yes.
There's something quite sort of maybe unique's not the right word, because I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that are willing to disprove that, but it feels kind of quite fresh to me.
It's quite simple, isn't it, I think, at its heart.
Suede does the Red Army Choir vibe to
Yeah.
like that.
Eisensteiny kind of size to it.